Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of She-Hulk. Great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I love we open with that magician, Donnie Blaze. I'm like, okay, I love the name just because of... it's just interesting to know, well, because it also depends on if they even do a Johnny Blaze in his universe, if they do a Ghost Rider, like make it canon to like this Earth in the MCU, like would they even do a Johnny Blaze? I mean, they kind of already did the passing of the torch from like Johnny to, oh god, I'm blanking on his character's name from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because he's like, Robbie, that's it, God, Robbie Reyes. Like, we saw the passing of the torch there. Once again, that's potentially a different Earth, so that whole thing. Either way, I love that he's trying to do all this magic and no one cares and I love Madison. Yay, Madison. But I love the whole, it's like, Madison, 2 N's and a Y, but it's not where you think it is. I love that. But he gets a sling, and I'm like, I love it because you're almost like, well, we know Ned, well, I'm assuming he's still a practicing magician. He might not remember everything. Well, because once again, we don't know what their lives are like. So, like, he might not, like, either Doctor Strange took it from him at the end, or who knows if Ned still has, like, that, aren't they called slings? The little rings that let them make the portals. I love that. And he sent her through one. And then, like, there you have Wong watching Sopranos. She comes through and she's like, oh, hey, yeah, I was talking to a goat and he led me. And she's like, wait, you're not with the goblins or anything. It's like, wait, what are you doing here? He's like, did some half-rate, like, magician send you here? She's like, yeah, sort of. And then she ended up spoiling the Sopranos for him. And he's just like, Donnie Blaze will have to pay. I'm like, this was the final straw for you. Yeah, all this other stuff is annoying, but the fact is that he sent someone there that spoiled the Sopranos for you. That was the final, like, nail in a coffin for Donnie. So, obviously at the same time, and I love Jim being like, hey, it was nice. You got to see Wong again. It's like, it's like having Twitter armor for a week. I was like, I love that line. And I love Jim being like, hey, why didn't you tell me you got attacked? This is a shovel. And it's like, what are you going to do with that shovel? It's like, it's going to be here, and I'm just not going to go into details about what it's for, for burying stuff, and we'll leave it at that. It's like, Dad, I'm a Hulk. I'm fine. It's cool. Everything's fine. And so I love the whole situation of she's also setting up her dating profile, but it's not... it didn't go well. I even love later, what's that, when she got an alert and it's like, oh, you've got no matches. She's like, why is that an alert? I was like, that's super jacked up. That's super messed up. That can't be a thing. I know there's no way that's a thing in real life, but obviously for the sake of the show, they did that. But I was like, that's super jacked up. But, she is trying to put herself out there, try to, kind of date a little, but, does not go well because, the first date, that date in particular, she went on, that guy was completely ignoring her, and I love that she's trying to flex me like, yo, I have superpowers because I'm a Hulk. He's like, yeah, cool. I'm like, none of that's interesting to you. I don't know whether that's supposed to be blasé. He's so blasé because it's like, what's the world we live in? So it's like superhero stuff is so blasé just because it's like, yeah, it's every day. It's like, oh, cool, whatever, And then he had the audacity to walk away and say, like, oh, she's a 6. And you're like, she's a 6 maybe. I'm like, you shut your mouth. Once again, for the sake of the show, it's like, okay. But it's like, just like, shut your mouth. She is not a 6. She is the furthest thing from a 6. I mean that in, like, the other direction. It's like, don't you talk about, once again, the character of Jennifer Walters, but it's also Tatiana Maslany, dude. Come on. And I also love that little showdown they had with the, like, oh, is someone going to pay? Like, they both looked at the check, and it's like, okay. I guess it was like almost like asserting dominance, like who's going to pay first, because it's the probably thing of like, well, I'm the guy, so I'm supposed to pay, but Jennifer's probably like, I'm not falling into like the typical patriarchy of like you paying first. It's like, no, I'm a well-established person. I'm a lawyer. I can pay for my own thing. But then like he was like, cool, maybe we could do this again, and she's like, yeah, sure, we're definitely going to do that. When in fact they're not. So she ended up getting stuck with the bill. And I love that Nikki's like, no, 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 no. You should actually try, dates as a Hulk. So she does later on, and she's like, yes, this is kind of demoralizing as Jen, but don't judge me too much. Because it's like dating as Jen Walters isn't happening, and I think that's the sad thing of it. It just seems like, right, the people she are dating are like, I think there's kind of this interesting spectrum of like, oh yeah, like the first guy, it's like, oh yeah, like I did 600 without even breaking a sweat. So it's like, okay, so there's always going to be with that. You're like, there's always going to be a little insecurity of like, yeah, you're like going to be like, because it almost felt like he had to undercut her a little bit. Like, oh yeah, I did 600 and I don't even have superpowers. It's like, you can lift a literal ton because you got superpowers and stuff. But it's like, cause I felt like that for a moment. I was like, yo, like you're both strong people that you probably like that. Like, oh, whoa, you can lift a ton. That's sick, bro. Like something like that. I don't know. Kind of like a no on that. There was a guy who was the filmmaker or whatever. Then there was a guy that's like, oh my god, like asking all these questions, finding her so fascinating, and then saying like, oh, how are you indestructible? She's like, well, I don't know if I'm indestructible, but she's like, I can't be hurt by things that are of this earth. I was like, I'm assuming because she hasn't really had to really prove it. Because she's like, yeah, I don't even want to put myself in a position where I could potentially get killed by testing out how indestructible I am. But I guess she's applying a lot of what happens for her cousin applying to herself. But their circumstances are different. So who knows if a lot of what he could end up withstanding could necessarily reflect. They are similar in regards, but I don't know like the power scaling, because like the Hulk power scaling is always like, obviously what it is in the MCU is not what it is in the comics, because like he's way stronger in the comics, and even then it's like the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets too. So it's like, once again, like it's an unclear, fully what the Hulk is capable of specifically in the MCU. But nevertheless, but the guy being like, oh, you're such a specimen. She's like, what? Did you just call me a specimen? It's like, yeah, that's a no-go. And the last guy, she really hit it off with. It's like, oh, he's like, oh, I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about you, which part of me is almost like, there's also that like cynical side of my brain kind of like, yeah, but you're probably like, just saying all the right things. You're just like, yeah, I'll say all the right things to things I know she wants to hear. Whether that's really real or not, I don't know. But it seems like, oh my god, this guy is everything. Like, oh my god, you're also a doctor too. That's amazing. But then like after they like smash and she's Jen again, and he's like, oh, what happened? She's like, oh yeah, this is me, just normal Jen. He's like, yeah, cool, see ya, and bounce. I'm like, that's super jacked up, because it just seems like, oh, it was just for the experience of like, oh my god, I had sex with the Hulk. That's sick. That's something I can like always parade around like, yo, bro, I had sex with the She-Hulk. Like. Or maybe it's just a thing of like, oh, you're just because like it is this thing of like, oh my god, you're this superhero. This puts you on top of this like very like high class position and stuff in his eyes, and now it's like, oh, you're just a regular person. At the end of the day, it's like, oh, that okay. It's like, oh, that sucks, because now it can enter that territory of like, right, so are people ever going to be with you because of you? They can't accept all sides of you. They just like, I guess maybe he was kind of thinking like, oh, she's She-Hulk all the time, but there's been. Like, obviously, like, when she was representing Emil, she was outside the prison as a human, so... But I guess if you don't watch enough news, you won't see that. But maybe you think, like, she's the Hulk all the time. You were probably hoping she would stay She-Hulk. Either way, that was actually kind of... I was like... She's like, yeah, a doctor's so cliche anyway. Where you're like, oh, that sucks. But, I mean, that can really dig deep into something where it's like, right... People, how do you know people like you for you and not just for the She-Hulk? It's just like, right, all parts of that are you. You're Jen at heart, whether you look like She-Hulk or not, So that is kind of messed up. We'll see what they really end up doing with that. But other than that, I do love Wong going to Jen because it's like, hey, I need you to make this guy stop. Even at one point later on being like, oh, I could send him to the mirror dimension. I don't think he'd die. And Jennifer's like, yeah, that'd be cool, but it's also like, we'd also probably lose the case, because it probably would hurt our case if you did that. But, because I even love at the end, during the credit sequence, we do see that Wong, I guess at some point did lock him in the mirror dimension. But it's like, right, so, while he was training to be the Mystic Arts, he trained for like a week and then bounced. Or at least got kicked out or whatever. And now Wong wants to, cease and desist, but it's like, well, there were no contracts signed, which is kind of crazy to think, like, right, a mystical issue having like a real world, like, human element to it. Like, oh, you have to like handle a mystical issue from a human law standpoint, which is kind of wild. So, showing up in court, and it's just kind of like, oh, how can you like tell someone to like assist and like, because it was like the whole thing was like, oh, that arts can't be copywritten. It's like, well, actually they can be, it's like, so, and I love it's like, ooh, what, like the paperwork or whatever, the filing she ended up handing him, he made it disappear. She's like, I see it, it's in your shirt. And the guy's like, no, it's not, and pushes it into Donnie's shirt more. And Wong, he's like, oh, like, you're just mad because I'm better than you. Wong's like, I can be more mystic. The Sorcerer Supreme doesn't get into competitions, but I have more mysticism in me in my sleep than you do. And he kind of, at the very end, he pops out the ball from his mouth. I'm like, dude, I love petty Wong. I mean, to be fair, like, him and Steven are both kind of petty and, but I like to know that, like, Wong he's just not as arrogant as Steven. Yeah, he's still human, but he's not nearly as arrogant. Plus, they're going to play it up more for comedic purposes in the show. But I love that, once again, just the fact this is going to court. I love it. And they have to bring Madison in as a witness. And she's like, oh, Wongers! I was like, oh, yeah! Oh, God. It's like, but do you stay drunk? Jesus. And then she's like, gets on the stand and everything. She's like, I swear to tell the truth. And it's like, so what happened to you? It's like, well, I end up in this place. It was okay. Well, it was kind of scary, but then it was like fun. I mean, it was a little scary, but like in a good way. She's like, I met this demon named Jake. He kind of let me go, but he basically like, oh, I have to sign with him because if I don't, if I break this contract or whatever, he'll kill me, like take the souls of me and everyone I love. I mean, like, really? And it's like, and the guy that's with Donnie being like, hey, I know Jake. It's like, wait, you do? It's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And we do get a peek at Jake at the end of the episode. He is just a goat, which I wonder where that stems from, the whole, like, the devil like goats and stuff like that. That gets used a bit, but I'm curious, like, where that initially stems from. I even love that they're all three of them are over there like doing magic, and Jim being like, Jesus, even the lawyer's a magician too. So, and it's like Madison leaves with Wong, and he's like, all right, you could come with me, just no more Sopranos spoilers. And she drops another one. He's like, come on. She's like, yeah, I was super sad when that said thing happened. I've never seen The Sopranos, so like a lot of that's out of context. I'll probably still remember that, and it'll probably like I'll probably still remember that whenever I do eventually watch The Sopranos. To be fair, the show's old at this point in time. It's like, if but it's still, it's just. And then Donnie messing up big time, and the entire situation playing out the way it does, with him opening a portal and all those demon bats coming out. And I love that Jennifer kept ignoring her phone, and he's like, Miss Walters, what are you doing? I'm calling you. Oh, now I see what's going on. And she's just like, all right, I'll be right back. And he's like, Morgan's like, I feel like I'm your dad right now. So, and Jennifer's like, so it's like, oh, it was, and the guy seemed like a great guy, and he was hot, which that shouldn't matter, but it does, and so tossing those things, and I'm curious where he was sending them. I don't know if that's the place that they went in multiverse, in the multiverse of madness where Wanda, quote unquote, died. Like, I don't know if that's the same place or not. It could just be like, oh, this is a frozen tundra. Let's send them here so they'll freeze. They can't die, but at least we can freeze them. So, putting in work. So I really love that whole sequence. So Donnie and the others are like, right, we'll kind of stop. So, but once again, it's kind of sad that your relationship and sex life aren't what you probably want them to be. And at the very end, she's getting sued by Titania because she's copywritten the name She-Hulk. And it's like, wait, what? How? No, it's like, yeah, but she got the copyright for it before you did, so now you're being sued because of it. It's like, okay, and I love Jim just being like, huh. Well, this is just kind of a bummer way to end the episode. Maybe the end, the end thing will be a little happier. And what is it? It's Wong and Madison. And she's like, oh, do you like this drink and this drink? And he's like, oh, like this, like, well, there's this thing of like vodka and yak milk and, It's like, I think we have some yak milk around here. She's like, oh, cool, I'd love to try it. I'm like, please, we have to, this can't just be a She-Hulk thing. From now on, even if it's the next Doctor Strange, whenever Wong comes up, there has to be lines of dialogue. Either Madison's still hanging around him, or at the very least, he mentions Madison. She's part of his story now. Like, come on, they're legitimate besties now, and I'm happy for Wong having a friend that he can watch TV with and everything. Because, you know, at the very least, we know, because he was like, yeah, we had some left over from, like, the wedding, so I'm assuming Christine's wedding. But I'm like, come on, dude. I want him to have another friend, but because it seems like Steven's like his only like friend that we're aware of. But you know, Wong seems like a sociable enough person, so him having at least one other friend in the MCU like Madison, I'm like, yeah. I hope we get more with her in the future. Like anytime, like I hope we don't just mention her. I hope Wong, like sometimes, like anytime Wong's around and just like Madison will randomly pop up. Like she has to now, dude. That's so good. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Now, like, she has to, that's going to be interesting to see how that whole copyright situation is going to work out and how that's all going to play out. But we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.